Hi, this is Gail Nettles with Beaded Jewelry Diva, and today we are going to make this bracelet. I call the style Slink stones. It is made with gemstone chips, size 11 seed beads, sterling silver clasp, and it's done in right angle weave. Let's go ahead, check out the supplies, and get started. We'll start off with what we need to make this bracelet as far as supplies go. We will need some gemstone chips. I've used most of a 16-inch strand for this. You'll need some size 11 seed beads, coordinating or contrasting, whatever you prefer with your gemstone colors. A clasp, and in this particular case I'm using a toggle clasp, sterling silver. A pair of scissors, of course, and needle and thread. Now I am using 8-pound test Power Pro for this particular project. I have found from in the past that you really need a hardier thread if you're going to go ahead and use this a single thread, and I suggest using a single thread because you're going to make multiple passes and you don't want to go ahead and get your needle all bound up. So you could probably try Fireline in 8-pound test. I just don't happen to have any in a darker color today. But Power Pro and 8-pound test is a great thread to use for this. Of course, you can use whatever you want, just make sure that it is a very heavy thread to use for this. Now I know that I'm using size 11 seed beads and I'm saying to use a heavy thread. Heavy thread meaning something like Wildfire or Fireline or Power Pro or something along those lines. Something that's strong yet it's fairly thin enough to go through the size 11 seed beads. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our bracelet. For the first step, we are going to string on the beads in this order. We've got 2 gemstone chips, 3 size 11s, 2 gemstone chips, and 3 size 11s. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and string these way down on the thread, leaving roughly a 10-inch tail on this one because we're going to use the tail to go ahead and attach the clasp. 10 to 12-inch tail actually. So we're going to go ahead and tie this into a circle. Tie it once again in another knot. There we go. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put my needle through these 3 size 11 seed beads. 1, 2, 3. These are going to be my, I guess depending on how you look at the bracelet, it's going to be the horizontal or vertical. It's kind of hard to tell. But anyway, these beads are going to end up being the joiners between these two. Sorry about that, you probably couldn't see that very well. So you see that now, because this is gemstone beads kind of move around some, what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to go once more through the circle. So through the gemstone chips, through the seed beads. And in general, it's probably best by way of thread to go ahead and use a fairly long length of thread. You can join this. It's not too terribly difficult, but then again, it's kind of hard to keep your tension if you have to join threads. So go ahead and use the longest thread that you feel comfortable with. Okay, so now we're pretty much back to the beginning. Put our needle through the size 11 seed beads. They want to cooperate. There we go, just about. Now I'm using a size 10 needle, and you can actually use a size 11, and I might end up going to a size 11 further on down. But usually I do this with a size 10, and surprisingly it usually works. Okay, there's the first set. Now what I'm going to do is pick up 2 gemstone chips, and any two, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you're looking for a specific pattern, go ahead and do that, but I just pick up anything. 3 seed beads, then 2 more gemstone chips. Don't allow these to fall off. Sometimes these gemstone chips are a little bit difficult to get slid on, especially when you're trying to demonstrate. Okay, now that I've got all these on, you see my thread is coming out of, the top of this red bead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle through the bottom of these seed beads. There we go. And there I go. Power Pro seems to do the same thing that Fireline does. Knots up at times. So there we go. We're in the circle. So now the next thing to do is go ahead and put your needle back through these seed beads, the gemstone chips. Now you gotta watch out because it's easy to get your thread moved over between the gemstone beads. Make sure that you are actually going from the seed bead to the gemstone bead. Oh, there we go. I got my tail caught. That's what that is. Okay, now once again through the 3 seed beads. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show this one more time. So you pick up 2 chips, 3 seed beads, two chips, well, there's one. Let's see if I can get a second one. There we go. So it's 2 chips, 3 size 11s, 2 chips. Now I want to add, you could really make these with size 8 seed beads if you really feel like it. You're just going to have a little bit more showing in between the gemstone chips. So there we go. We've got everything. I'm going to turn this slightly upside down just so you can see the thread is coming out of the top of this size 11 seed bead. So I'm going to put my needle through the bottom and pull tight. And keep your tail out of the way. So there we go. Once again, you go ahead and put your needle through the 2 gemstone chips. Pull it tight. Through the 3 seed beads. Pull it tight. Keep your tail out of the way. That's the one thing about using a long tail like this. You have to watch to not let it get stuck in your work. But you really will need a long tail for this. Okay, so now you can see that my thread is coming out of the top of this size 11. I'm going to add one more thing before I go ahead and shut down for a little while and go ahead and finish this. Every so often it's nice to go ahead and circle around and give a second loop through these beads. That keeps your tension a little bit more even, or it keeps your tension, I should say, and keeps it tighter. It also reinforces a little bit. So about every third or fourth you might want to go ahead and do a double through there, double pass. So let me go ahead and finish up this particular set, and I'll come back. We'll show you how to go ahead and put the clasp onto this. See you in a bit. Bye. Now we've got the bracelet finished. What I've done is I have made it the length that I want it to be on my wrist, minus the length of the clasp. Okay, what I'm doing now is, you see that my thread is coming out of the last gemstone bead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to once again put it through the 3 seed beads, draw it through, and now I'm going to add my clasp. So I pick up, let me see, I have 14 seed beads here in front of me. So I'm going to pick up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Take the toggle end of the clasp, and I'm doing the toggle end first because I've got more thread on this particular end. Now in this case you see that my beads are coming through the toggle. For this particular one it's not an issue for me, because by the time that it ends up on the bracelet it pretty much slides to the middle anyway. But if you don't like that effect, go ahead and use like size 8 seed beads. So I've got 7 toggle, then the other 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now you see again the thread is coming out of the top of this seed bead. So I'm going to put my needle through the bottom of that seed bead row, pull tight. Now you can see that the toggle will end up more or less in the middle by the time everything is said and done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reinforce this by going through this whole series again, the 7 seed beads, toggle, another 7 seed beads. And especially when it comes to a toggle clasp, you really need to have this reinforced. Now you notice that right now it looks like I've got, too much thread and it's showing. Now that's okay, because it's, by the time that I tighten this up, it's going to have closed up together. Okay, I've got those. My suggestion is at least 3 passes through this. Power Pro is pretty strong, but when it comes to clasps, especially toggle clasps, you need to go ahead and be safe. So tighten that up some. Keep on going down. And once more through. Again, tighten it so that the thread doesn't end up showing. There we go. So once more through. And you can see I need to tighten up just a little bit more. Oh, actually I don't, because we've got the toggle that's going to end up in that end loop. So again though, I'm going to go ahead and go through this one more time for extra reinforcement. Better too much than too little, and have the clasp break. Because this is, I mean, you can go ahead and repair something like this, but it's not a whole lot of fun to try to figure out where to start and where to reinforce. So I just like to go ahead and give it some extra. Now you could go through this a fourth time, needle, or I should say needle and thread allowing. Now I'm using regular seed beads. I'm not using delicas or Tohos or anything like that. The size 8 Power Pro is pretty thin looking, but it's very strong. Okay, through these final horizontal 3 seed beads. Okay, that's the toggle portion. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reinforce these last few loops of the bracelet, or the last few sections of the bracelet. Because again, they're the areas that are going to take the most of a beating, so to speak. And besides, there's a lot of times you'll see like extra thread hanging out. This helps draw everything tighter together. So again, I'm going through this last section, through those 3 horizontals. Now it's starting to get a little bit tight. I probably could make one more pass of thread through this, but it's starting to get a little tight. Back down through these guys. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down another section in the interest of time. And you might be bored watching me to go down through a whole bunch more. A lot of times though, I will go ahead and go down through maybe 3 or 4. So once again, so I just stuck myself. Hopefully you won't see any blood dripping. No bleeding. Okay, through this one. And now we're going to start the tie off. What I'm going to do is do a half hitch knot between the seed bead and the gemstone, so my needle is going under or between, if I can get it in between. Oops, that's why I can't do it. Going through the seed bead. Okay, see that my needle is going underneath the seed bead thread, between the thread and the gemstone, or the seed bead and the gemstone. So I'm pulling it through to a loop. I'm putting my needle through the loop and tighten. Going through a seed bead, going underneath, and this is where you got to be real careful sometimes that you don't pinch yourself. Underneath the thread, through the loop, tighten, and then I'm going to go through 2 seed beads here. It's starting to get a little bit difficult to go through some because now I've got knots in the way as well. So be very careful. But we've got the toggle on, and I've gone ahead and done all my half hitches. What we're going to do now is finish up with the other end of the clasp. Now you see when I started, I ended up having my thread being joined at this set of red seed beads and it's not coming out of the top where I want it to be. So what I do, and by the way I've threaded a needle onto this tail, so I'm going to go ahead and go up through these two chips. Then I'm going to go through these 3 seed beads. Now I'm going to pick up a total of 10 seed beads. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, clasp, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the same that I did on the other end, I'm going to go ahead and put my needle through the bottom of the seed beads, the opposite end of where the working thread is coming out of, and pull it tight. And again, it looks like the clasp is going to wander through the bracelet. If you don't like that look, use size 8 seed beads, or you can have a different type of clasp with a smaller loop, whatever you prefer. Okay, now that I pulled it tight, I'm going to go ahead and go up through this 2 more times, because again I prefer to go ahead and keep it a little tighter, a little bit more reinforcing. So I've got a half hitch here, go through the gemstones. Now you can tie a half hitch in between the gemstones if you want as well. I tend to not, but it doesn't really matter, you can. The only time I don't like to, boy, this one's tough to get through, probably, oh, I have the knot there, that's why. The original starting knot. The one thing that I like to do is when I'm actually ending and getting ready to cut the thread, I like to be going through a size 8 seed bead one or a size 11 seed bead when I do that, because that means that it's a shorter thread that I cut off, and if for some reason it should come out, I don't have this big old tail hanging. Oops, I made a goof there. Here's a good example of what not to do at times. No, maybe I didn't. So much for my goof not being a goof, or a not goof that I'm calling a goof, or however you want to call it. So since I have the thread, I'm going to go ahead and go down through 1 more. Then I'm going to tell you a few tricks I used on this one on my way of actually doing everything through this, all the little sections. Okay, here's something to watch for while you're going ahead and making this. The biggest thing is tension. You have to get good tension or else you're going to show a lot of thread. I probably should have used like a green Power Pro for this particular one, but I didn't, and you can see that there are spots where I did not keep my tension tight enough. And you can see that the thread is showing through. A way to fix that, and yes, there is a way to fix it if you don't like it, is to go ahead and do a few half hitches, get some more thread in there, and go ahead and tighten up this circle a few times. Go through some of the adjoining sections and tie several half hitch knots before you go ahead and cut the thread. So that you have to look for. Now, to be real honest, you probably won't notice it when it's on your wrist, but again, if you don't like it, you can go back and fix it. Now, the best way to avoid this is to keep your tension tight through this whole bracelet. One of the best ways of doing that to keep your tension tight is to go through these sections more than once. I went about every 3rd one. I did a 2nd loop through them. Not only does it reinforce it, but it keeps the tension tighter, so you have fewer of these little spaces in between. And again, I used just about a 16-inch strand. Now I have what I call fat wrists, so this is roughly 7.5 inches all told. I did have some gemstone chips left over, so you could make an 8-inch bracelet without a problem. If you wanted to go ahead and do a necklace from this, I would suggest using 2 strands at least. You can also go ahead and put extra beads on the end of it if you want to, just for like round beads. For a necklace, if 2 strands of seed bead or 2 strands of chips aren't quite enough for your necklace, there you go though. We have what I call my Slink stones, which is really right angle weave done with gemstone chips and size 11 seed beads. I hope you've enjoyed this, and come on and see me over at beadedjewelrydiva.com and see some more of my video tutorials and ebook tutorials. Catch you later. Bye.